bit more.
I know, Steve's always wanting more. There you go. I know this is a short flight, so I thought I would just start, and I know we've done a number of briefings, but just giving you all just a couple of key points on the president's engagement in the operation that happened overnight last night. The operation was months in planning. The president was first briefed on this operation in depth over a month ago by the actual operational commanders. He was regularly updated by the National Security Team on the planning details of this operation, to include a briefing in the Oval Office on Monday. Last night, the president monitored key aspects of the operation in real time in the White House Situation Room. I think you all saw the photo that we released on that. I also want to stress that the president directed the Department of Defense to take every precaution to minimize non-combatant casualties in the operation, hence how they proceeded with the operation. Unfortunately, as we know and we saw, ISIS once again revealed its barbarity in a final act of cowardice and displaying a never-ended disregard for innocent lives. Haj Abdallah detonated an explosive device shortly after U.S. forces arrived on site, killing himself, a woman, and 3 children. Of course, there will be more assessments. I mean, the Department of Defense will do an assessment, as they always do, but just wanted to outline that at the top. I know we also did a briefing on the trip today to New York, but why don't we get to your questions?
Sure. 2 subjects. First, obviously, news of the day.
Yes.
Big picture strategically. What does this mean for U.S.? What does this mean for the Islamic State? And what does this mean for Syria? And did you coordinate or communicate with Russia at all, given the airspace issues in Syria?
Let me start with the first question. Haj Abdullah's death delivers a catastrophic blow to ISIS and shows that the United States will take out terrorist threats no matter where they stand try to hide in the world. Last night's effective action took a major terrorist leader off the battlefield and makes it clear that we will hold anyone accountable who seeks to harm Americans at home or around the world. I would also note that while this planning was taking place, of course, we were also leading a coordinated effort. As you all know, more than 200 engagements with leaders around the world to stand up for the sovereign, territorial integrity of Ukraine. And so it shows the competence of U.S. leadership, the effectiveness of U.S. leadership, and our ability to keep the American people safe while also standing up for our values at the same time. In terms of international coordination, it's a good question. I will have to check with the State Department on the specifics of it.
Was there a video component to the scene unfolding in the Situation Room, and who else was in there with him?
I'm sure I can get you a complete list. I know some individuals were shown in the photo we released. Members of his national security team were there, including Jake Sullivan, Liz Sherwood-Randall. I think you could see John Feiner in the photo, obviously the vice president. We will venture to get you a full list of attendees.
Jen, on the trip today, there was some reporting by the New York Times that the White House is trying to move more to the center when it comes to crime, and there's concern about reaching out to police organizations, and obviously there's a policing executive order that's supposed to be in the works. Can you talk a bit about, is there a conflict between civil rights groups who want more accountability for police, want less use of force unnecessarily, and what the White House is doing right now, like on this trip?
Well, I would say first we would reject the notion that we are moving into any political direction. The president has a decades-long record of fighting, of being an advocate for fighting crime and supporting local cops programs with necessary and appropriate resources and funding. He has never been an advocate for defunding the police, as you know, but his record on these issues long precedes his time as president. I would say that he is also committed, and he believes that both need to come hand in hand, that pursuing police reform is a effective, accountable community policing helps us fight crime, and it also makes us safer. So while we are here in New York, what you will hear him talk about today, as we've previewed a little bit, is his decades-long commitment to supporting law enforcement, to ensuring that communities have the resources they need and you'll hear him talk about his sweeping and comprehensive plan to address gun crime, and our focus on implementing that, but also, again, ensuring that communities have the funding they need, including his proposal to double federal support for community policing with $300 million more for cities, plus another $200 more for community violence intervention program. But you will also hear him, and he also remains very committed to taking steps we can to put in place police reform measures that he thinks are long overdue. Obviously, his preference was to have had that through legislative processes, but we are looking at what can be done through executive actions. I think you may have seen Susan Rice convey we're not close on that front, but we are working on it.
Jen, we've had 6 law enforcement officers killed by criminals this year. The president has not spoken out forcefully against any of these attacks. Even some of his supporters say the lack of forceful condemnation is demoralizing to police. Why hasn't he spoken out more forcefully against these attacks?
More forcefully against attacks against police officers? He went and gave an entire speech to the police forces just a few months ago. We have put out statements, and he has condemned the violence and the attacks on these police officers. He's reached out to family members. He is somebody. Let me finish my answer, because I think that's an inaccurate characterization, and you haven't even given me names of who you're talking about. But the president's record.
Black law enforcement officers. He's one of the people who said it's demoralizing.
The president's record is very clear here. He has a long record of advocating for, supporting, through funding, through speaking out, the role of local police, of national police, and the important role they play in addressing crime and keeping communities safe.
Why not go to one of the officers' funerals if you're going to come to New York and show support for the law enforcement?
The president, we have been planning this trip in coordination with the mayor's office. We've invited a number of officials to attend the trip. He also is, as you know, going to the police headquarters to make clear his strong support for them.
Jen, I know you gave a little bit of the lead up to the raid. I mean, can you give more on the president's thinking ahead of the ISIS raid?
I can, but tell me more about what you mean.
I just mean, like, you know, a little bit more from either inside the room, I know it's the Situation Room, but or what the president was thinking as this raid was taking place.
I think the president, again, has been received a number of briefings, as I noted, from his national security team over the course of the last several weeks, including one from the operational commanders just a few days ago. And the president was thinking, we got to go after terrorists wherever they are and get them and protect the American people. He also was made clear and reiterated this at every point in the process to do everything we can to avoid civilian casualties. So I think you saw the photo of him in the room. You're always in those moments. You're always watching. You're thinking about the bravery and the courage of the service members who are on the ground, implementing an operation, and that is, of course, front and center for him always. But he was also thinking about the role he plays as commander-in-chief in keeping the country safe, and certainly taking out the current head of ISIS is a big step forward in that.
Number on how many civilian casualties there were?
That is an assessment being done by DoD. I would note that, as was confirmed, and I just confirmed again, that given the intended target self-detonated and deployed a tactic used by his predecessor that shows again the brutality of ISIS and killed his own family. We certainly know the facts of that, but I will leave it to DoD to give any additional assessments.
And if I could just on you, Sika, there are a number of House Democrats and Senate Democrats that really want to
We're not going to make a calculation or direction of that from here. As you know, the process, how it works, is once it passes the House, we would expect it would go to conference, and there would be a discussion about any disagreements or any final details that are not aligned between the two pieces of legislation. That's a normal part of legislating, and we certainly support that. Obviously, the president has said he wants to sign it as quickly as possible.
A few things. Were you in the room last night, the Situation Room? Okay. Let's start with this one. Today's event. The governor is there as well. This is an official event, but is this an endorsement of her election campaign?
This is an event and an opportunity. The president is a big fan of the governor, but this is not a political event. This is an event for the president to stand with leaders in New York as they've seen, the tragic deaths of a number of police officers recently. People who have been serving on behalf of communities across New York, and also for the president to make clear he stands with them in their efforts to address crime in their communities.
2 others from last night. Was he able to watch the whole thing live?
I don't have a detail of how of that.
And were any members of the special forces team who conducted last night's raid involved in the Baghdadi operation?
I would point you to the Department of Defense on that.
There's a meeting today, with Presidents Putin and Xi in China. How do we feel about that meeting and not being invited to it?
There are diplomatic meetings that happen all the time. Our national security advisor, I believe, just recently spoke with his counterpart. Let me just get all the specific details on this so I can make sure it's accurate for you. Our view and assessment is that Secretary Blinken recently spoke to China's Foreign Minister Wang, his counterpart, and underscored the global security and economic risks posed by further Russian aggression against Ukraine, and conveyed that de-escalation and diplomacy are the responsible way forward. That is the message we continue to convey, including the fact that a destabilizing conflict in Europe would impact China's interests all over the world. China should certainly know that, but we have our own means of communicating through counterparts. We'll continue to do that and continue to stand up for what we feel should be global values.
And on the Supreme Court, any update on when he might begin interviewing potential nominees?
I'm not going to provide an update on the process from here.
Hey, Jen, two things on Congress. It seems like on the Russia sanctions negotiations that Congress's intent to at least include some preemptive sanctions into that bill. Is that a red line for you, or could you ultimately support something that has preemptive sanctions?
We have done some sanctions in advance already. Our approach, and we are in very close touch with members of Congress about this legislation, which I don't think has been formally even proposed yet. So we are in close contact and conversations with them. Our approach from the beginning has been based on our belief that the crippling economic sanctions package that we have been discussing and has been underway in our interagency process, which we've briefed Congress on, could have a deterrent impact, as we're already seeing in the Russian markets. But we've never set a red line. I'm not setting a red line. We've done sanctions in advance, and we're in discussion with Congress about the legislation.
And then on the approach talks ongoing right now, can you detail a little bit about the White House's engagement in them? And do you support larger increases to the defense budgets to get Republicans on board?
Those talks are being, we're closely engaged with them from the White House, from our OMB team, but I'm not going to detail specifics of those behind-the-scenes talks at this point.
And one more.
Go right
Any fear that the ongoing talks now will further delay your budget for next year, which I think Sean DeYoung said is coming past the State of the Union?
I don't have any assessment of that. I know she confirmed that just a couple of days ago, but I don't have a new timeline beyond that. So that's my understanding of where it stands at this point.
So Russia and Belarus are having some military exercises. Is this any cause for concern?
We've raised our UN ambassador, Linda Thomas Greenfield, raised some concerns about this when she spoke at the United Nations, where she talked about her concern, about our concern, about 5,000 troops in Belarus, the potential for up to 30,000 more. Clearly, this is an escalatory, not a de-escalatory action, and certainly we look at these developments as we make assessments about how to support and work with our other NATO partners in the region.
With regard to the civilian casualties in Syria, is the administration saying that they were caused entirely by the bomb detonating or by crossfire from the one lieutenant engaging with U.S. forces? Give us some clarity on that.
Obviously, these events just happened overnight, and so I'm going to let the Department of Defense do a final assessment, which I'm certain they will provide additional detail on once it's finalized.
Will there be any evidence or release to support the idea? I mean, I know the U.S. has put out its statement that they've detonated the bomb themselves, but will the U.S. provide any evidence, because there may be people that are skeptical of the events that took place and what happened to the civilians?
Skeptical of the U.S. military's assessment when they went and took out the leader of ISIS, that they are not providing accurate information, and ISIS is providing accurate information?
Well, not ISIS, but I mean, the U.S. has not always been straightforward about what happens with civilians, and I mean, that is a fact.
Well, As you know, there's an extensive process that the Department of Defense undergoes. The president made clear from the beginning, at every point in this process, that doing everything possible to avoid civilian casualties was his priority and his preference. I just reconfirmed, and I think our national security colleague who did a briefing this morning also reiterated that the individual who was the target detonated himself, killing his entire family. Given these events just happened less than 24 hours ago, we're going to give them time to make a final assessment, and they'll provide every detail they can.
Civil rights advocates have asked the president to visit Rikers Island. I know that's not on this trip. Can you speak to why this isn't on the trip, and is there a plan for the president to visit Rikers Island anytime soon?
I don't have any trips to preview at this point in time. Obviously, this trip today, which is a full trip, including the president's visit to thank law enforcement officials, to convey clearly to them that he has their back, that he is going to continue to support adequate funding and resources that they need to keep their community safe, and also to meet, of course, with leaders in the state who have shared concerns about rising crime. But I expect he'll be back to New York, during his time as president. But I don't have any preview of a trip to Rikers.
Thanks, Jen.
One thing, Jen, do you have any updates on the German chancellor visit? If you're planning a press conference or anything to share on the details, or
We are, but let me see if I can get the final details for all of you.
We're about to land, just so you know.
Thank you. Guys, let's just land.
Okay.
Praise for him back. Praise for him back.